The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I kept the paper cup pressed between my palms anyway, needing something to anchor me to reality. The waiting room of Zanalotti Holdings smelled of leather and money. That particular scent of expensive cologne mixed with furniture polish that screamed power in a way my thrift store blazer never could. My phone buzzed. Mom's nurse. I silenced it without looking, counting the tiles on the marble floor instead. 63 across. I'd counted them 4 times already, each count a distraction from the number that had been burned into my brain for 3 weeks. 250 dollars. That's what the surgeon said it would cost to remove the tumor that was killing my mother, cell by poisonous cell. Miss Ricci? The receptionist's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. She was immaculate, blonde hair and a perfect chignon, manicured nails clicking against her keyboard. The kind of woman who'd never counted tiles while waiting to beg for a job she was wildly unqualified for. Mr. Zanalotti will see you now. I stood, smoothing down my skirt with hands that trembled despite my best efforts. The blazer was too tight across my shoulders. I'd borrowed it from my roommate Elena, who was built like a runway model while I was more scrappy survivor of multiple financial disasters. The skirt was mine, purchased 3 years ago for my college graduation, back when I thought a business degree and determination could solve any problem. Funny how life teaches you differently. The hallway to Orlando Zanalotti's office stretched longer than seemed architecturally possible. My heels, also Elena's, half a size too small, clicked against marble that probably cost more per square foot than my monthly rent. Artwork lined the walls, the kind you see in museums behind velvet ropes and bored security guards. I recognized a Rothko, or at least what I desperately hoped wasn't an original Rothko, because if it was, I was walking past more money than my mother's surgery 3 times over. The receptionist knocked twice on massive mahogany doors, then pushed them open. Miss Olivia Ricci, sir. I stepped inside, and immediately wanted to step back out. The office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes that looked actually read rather than decorative. A desk that could have doubled as a dining table for 12. But it was the man behind that desk who made my breath catch, and not in any romantic way that would make this story simpler. Orlando Zanalotti looked exactly like the photos I'd found during my desperate late-night Googling, except somehow more. More imposing. More dangerous. More everything. He was perhaps 40, with dark hair silvering at the temples, strong Italian features, and eyes so dark they looked black in the afternoon light. He wore a 3-piece suit in charcoal gray that probably cost more than my car. Back when I'd had a car, before I'd sold it to pay for Mom's last round of chemo. He didn't stand when I entered. Didn't smile. Just studied me with those unreadable eyes while I stood there feeling like a specimen under glass. Sit, he said finally, his voice carrying the faintest trace of an Italian accent that softened certain consonants, in a way that might have been attractive if I wasn't terrified. I sat. The leather chair was butter-soft and probably worth more than everything I owned combined. You're here for the executive secretary position. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. He picked up what I recognized as my resume. 1 page of desperate optimism trying to mask 3 months of unemployment and a work history that screamed unstable. Your references are concerning, he continued, flipping the page over as if hoping to find something more impressive on the back. You've had 7 jobs in the past 3 years, each lasting an average of 5 months. Care to explain? This was it. The moment where I was supposed to spin some professional lie about seeking growth opportunities or pursuing my passion. The moment where I was supposed to be the polished, competent candidate who definitely didn't cry in her car after job interviews. But I was so tired. Tired of lying, tired of pretending, tired of the weight of my mother's diagnosis and my father's ghost, and the crushing certainty that I was going to lose everything that mattered. My mother has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, I said, the words coming out flat and honest and probably career-ending. I've been fired from 3 jobs for missing too much work to take her to appointments. I quit 2 others because they wouldn't give me time off when she was hospitalized. The other 2 were layoffs that had nothing to do with my performance, though I'm sure you can verify that however mob bosses verify things. Silence crashed into the room like a physical force. Orlando Zanelotti's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Mob boss? Oh, come on. I was so far past salvaging this that I might as well commit. Everyone knows who you are, what you are. The Zanelotti family doesn't exactly hide its connections. I'm not stupid, Mr. Zanelotti. I know I'm sitting in the office of one of the most powerful crime lords in New York. I know this job probably involves keeping secrets and looking the other way and pretending not to notice when men in expensive suits come in to discuss things that definitely aren't listed in any corporate bylaws. His eyebrow rose fractionally. And yet, you applied anyway. I'm desperate. The truth tasted like copper and resignation. My mother needs surgery that costs $250,000. She has maybe 6 months without it, maybe 2 years with it if we're lucky. I've applied to every legitimate company in this city. Nobody wants to hire someone with my track record. But I'm smart, Mr. Zanelotti. I'm organized. I'm loyal. I don't gossip. I don't ask questions. And I will show up every single day and do whatever you need me to do. Because the alternative is watching my mother die when there's a chance, even a small one, that she doesn't have to. I stopped, breathing hard, realizing I'd just verbal vomited my entire tragic backstory over a man who could probably make me disappear with a phone call. So yes, I finished more quietly. I applied anyway. Orlando Zanelotti leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin, studying me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. Finally, he spoke. Your father was Carlo Ricci. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. How did you? I know everything about people who want to work for me. Miss Ricci, including that your father was killed 15 years ago in what the police classified as a mugging gone wrong. His eyes held mine. You were 10 years old. Your mother never remarried. You put yourself through CUNY on scholarships and night shifts at a diner. You graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration. You're 25 years old, 5'3", left-handed, allergic to shellfish, and you've been dating a man named Marcus Chen for the past 8 months. The casual recitation of my life made my skin crawl. That's incredibly invasive. That's incredibly necessary. He stood, moving to the window, his back to me. This job requires absolute discretion, Miss Ricci. The woman who held it before you lasted 8 years. She left only because she got married and moved to Naples. She knew things that could have destroyed me, sent me to prison for the rest of my life. She never spoke a word of it to anyone. I wouldn't either, I said to his back. So you say. He turned, and in the afternoon light, I could see he was younger than I'd initially thought. Perhaps 35, with fine lines around his eyes that spoke of stress rather than age. But everyone has a price, Miss Ricci. Everyone has a breaking point. The question is whether I can trust you not to reach yours while in my employ. You can't, I admitted. Trust me, I mean. You don't know me. I don't know you. Trust isn't built in a 20-minute interview. But I can promise you this. I need this job more than I've ever needed anything in my life. And I don't break my promises. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. It was gone too quickly to be sure. The position pays $85,000 annually, he said. With full health insurance that covers dependents. You'd work Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, with occasional evening events that would be compensated additionally. You'd manage my calendar, handle confidential correspondence, screen my calls. And yes, Miss Ricci, you would absolutely be required to keep secrets. Some of them quite dark. $85,000. It was more than I'd ever made, more than I'd ever dreamed of making this soon out of college. But it still wasn't enough. not nearly enough. I accept, I said anyway, because even impossible hope was better than no hope at all. However, he continued, moving back to his desk, I'm not interested in hiring someone who's going to be distracted by medical emergencies and family crises. So here's my counteroffer. He pulled out a checkbook, an actual checkbook, like something from a different era, and began writing. The scratch of pen on paper was the only sound in the vast office. You'll start Monday. Your mother's surgery will be scheduled for next Friday at Mount Sinai with Dr. Reeves, who's the best pancreatic surgeon on the East Coast. All costs will be covered, including post-operative care and any necessary follow-up treatments. He tore the check free and slid it across the desk. I stared at it, unable to process the number written there in precise slanted script. $250. I don't understand, I whispered. It's quite simple, Miss Ricci. I'm investing in my new employee. Consider it a signing bonus, if that makes it easier to accept. You can't work effectively if you're watching your mother die. This eliminates that distraction. This is $250,000. My voice sounded strange, distant. I'm aware of how much I've written. A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. I didn't get where I am by being bad at math. I can't accept this. Even as I said it, my fingers were itching to grab the check, to run to the hospital, to save her. You can, and you will. His voice held no room for argument. Consider it a loan, if your pride requires it. We can discuss repayment terms after your mother recovers. Or don't. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, Miss Ricci. This is nothing to me. It was everything to me. Everything and more. I looked up from the check to find him watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why would you do this for a stranger? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, my mother died of cancer when I was 16. We had money for the treatments. She had the best doctors, the best care money could buy. It didn't matter. She died anyway. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But at least I never had to watch her suffer because we couldn't afford to try. No one should have to make that choice, Miss Ricci, not even mob bosses' secretaries. The raw honesty in his voice startled me more than the check had. This was Orlando Zanalotti, the man newspapers called the Ice King of Manhattan, the alleged crime lord who reputedly controlled everything from the docks to half the judges in the city, and he was giving me $250,000 because his own mother had died. I don't know what to say, I managed finally. Say yes. Say you'll start Monday. Say you'll work harder for me than you've worked for anyone. He paused. And say you'll never betray my trust, because the woman who kept secrets for 8 years. She's still alive and well in Naples, because she kept her word. I value loyalty above everything else, Miss Ricci. Everything. The threat was gentle but unmistakable. This gift came with strings attached, with expectations, with consequences I couldn't fully imagine yet. I picked up the check, my hands trembling so badly the paper rattled. I'll start Monday. I'll work harder than you can imagine, and I will never, ever betray your trust, Mr. Zanalotti. You have my word. Then we have an agreement. He extended his hand across the desk. Welcome to Zanalotti Holdings, Miss Ricci. His handshake was firm, warm, and somehow both reassuring and terrifying. As I left his office, clutching a check that would save my mother's life, I had no idea I'd just made a deal with a man who would change everything. My life, my heart, my understanding of what loyalty really meant. All I knew was that Orlando Zanalotti had just given me hope when I'd had none, and for that, I would have walked into hell itself. I had no idea how prophetic that thought would prove to be. The first thing I learned about working for Orlando Zanalotti was that he never forgot anything. The second thing was that he noticed everything. And the third, the thing that kept me awake at night, was that I was being watched even when he wasn't in the room. Mom's surgery happened exactly as promised. Dr. Reeves was a small, precise man who spoke about pancreatic tumors the way other people discussed weather patterns. Clinical, factual, oddly soothing in his certainty. The operation took 11 hours. I spent them in a waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and desperation, drinking terrible coffee and trying not to think about the check I'd deposited, the job I'd accepted, the man who'd made it all possible. Marcus came by around hour 6. My boyfriend of 8 months, though calling him that felt strange now, like wearing clothes that no longer fit quite right. He was handsome in an unthreatening way, with sandy hair and wire-rimmed glasses and a job doing something with computers that I'd never fully understood. "This is incredible, Liv," he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of his usual cologne. Something citrusy and safe. "Your mom's getting the best care possible. How did you manage to afford this?" The lie came easily, too easily. "The hospital has a program for cases like hers. They approved emergency funding." His eyes searched mine, and for a moment I thought he'd press, demand the truth. But he just nodded, accepting my explanation the way he accepted most things, with mild interest and no follow-up questions. That should have been my first clue. I started at Zanellotti Holdings the following Monday, Mom still in post-op recovery but alive, awake, already showing signs of improvement that made the nurses whisper about miracles. Orlando's office took up the entire 42nd floor of a building in Midtown that bore his family name in discreet bronze letters. "Coffee," he said when I arrived at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes early because punctuality felt like the least I could offer. "Black, 2 sugars, from the Italian place on 52nd Street. Not the corporate garbage from downstairs. No good morning. No welcome to your first day. Just an order delivered in that accent-touched voice that made every statement sound vaguely like a threat. I went to the Italian place on 52nd Street. It took 20 minutes round trip. When I returned, there were 3 men in expensive suits sitting in Orlando's office, their voices low and tense even through the thick mahogany doors. "You'll wait," said Sophia, the receptionist who'd greeted me during my interview. She was friendlier now, though her eyes still held a warning I couldn't quite decode. "When they're in there, you don't interrupt. Ever. I don't care if the building's on fire." I waited. The coffee went cold. I made a fresh cup. That one went cold too. 45 minutes later, the men emerged. They looked like businessmen. Crisp suits, leather briefcases, expensive watches. But there was something in their eyes, a hardness that no amount of polish could disguise. One of them, a bear of a man with salt and pepper hair, stopped when he saw me. "This, the new girl?" "Miss Ricci." Orlando appeared in his doorway. "Bring the coffee. Gentlemen, we're done here." It wasn't a dismissal so much as a statement of fact. They left. I brought the coffee, now lukewarm, into his office. He took a sip, grimaced. "Cold. You were in a meeting. Make fresh. And Miss Ricci?" He looked up from the documents on his desk. "When I ask for coffee, I expect it hot. Meetings are not your concern. My coffee is." The correction was gentle, but firm. I made fresh coffee, this time keeping a thermal carafe at my desk. It was the first of many small adjustments I'd make to survive in Orlando Zanellotti's orbit. The work itself was straightforward enough. Manage his calendar, which was color-coded in a system that took me 2 days to memorize. Screen his calls, transferring only those from an approved list and taking detailed messages from everyone else. Handle his correspondence, which ranged from legitimate business matters to thinly veiled threats written in the language of corporate speak. Mr. Carbone called again about the waterfront property, I told him one afternoon, 3 weeks into my employment. He's insisting on a meeting. Mr. Carbone can insist all he wants. I'm not interested in selling. He said to tell you that everyone has a price. Something dangerous flashed in Orlando's eyes. Call him back. Tell him my price is his continued good health. He'll understand what that means. I made the call. Mr. Carbone did understand. He stopped calling. It was like that constantly, navigating a world where normal business practices mix seamlessly with implied violence. I learned to read between the lines of seemingly innocent requests. I learned which meetings required absolute privacy and which could be interrupted in emergencies. I learned that when Orlando asked me to make arrangements for someone, he didn't mean hotel reservations. I learned, too, that he was watching me. Not obviously. He never hovered or micromanaged. But I'd catch him sometimes, his dark eyes tracking me as I moved around the office, as though he were studying a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. And there were small things. The way he always knew when I'd taken lunch even though I never told him. The way he commented once on the book I'd been reading on the subway. The way he asked if my mother was sleeping better when I hadn't mentioned her sleep problems to anyone at work. How did you know that? I asked, startled into directness. Know what, Miss Ricci? About my mother's insomnia. He didn't even look up from his papers. You've been researching post-operative sleep aids. Your browser history shows 14 different medical sites. I assume it's not for yourself. You look exhausted but functional. Therefore, your mother. You're monitoring my internet activity? I monitor everything in this office. It's in your employment contract. Paragraph 7, subsection C. You did read it before signing? I had, actually, though clearly not carefully enough. The realization that my every keystroke was being tracked should have felt invasive. Instead, it just felt like another piece of the puzzle that was Orlando Zanolotti, a man who trusted nothing and verified everything. The chamomile and lavender combination works best, he added, still not looking up. And magnesium before bed. My mother found it helpful during her treatments. The casual mention of his own loss, delivered in that same flat tone he used to discuss business mergers, made my throat tight. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just get her sleeping. You're more useful when you're not half dead from worry. It should have been insulting. Instead, it felt like care disguised as pragmatism. Marcus didn't like my new job. That became clear during our 4th week, when I had to cancel dinner plans because Orlando needed me at an evening meeting with the Rossi family. Another legitimate business discussion that definitely wasn't about restaurants. You're working late again, Marcus said over the phone, his voice tight with an irritation I'd rarely heard before. 3rd time this week, Liv. I know. I'm sorry, but this job is taking over your life. You're exhausted. You barely have time for us anymore. And that boss of yours... He stopped, and I could hear something in the silence that made my stomach clench. What about him? Nothing. Just be careful, okay? Men like Orlando Zanolotti, they're not. They're dangerous, Liv. I'm his secretary, Marcus, not his confidant. I schedule his meetings and answer his phones. That's it. Another pause. Right. Of course, I'm just worried about you. But worry didn't explain the strange tension in his voice, or the way he'd started asking detailed questions about my workday, about Orlando's schedule, about who came and went from the office. It should have been my second clue. The truth came 6 weeks into my employment. On a Thursday evening when I was the last one in the office besides Orlando. I'd stayed late to organize files for an audit, legitimate business for once, and was locking up the file cabinets when I heard voices from Orlando's office. Telling you she doesn't know anything. Orlando's voice, harder than I'd ever heard it. And I'm telling you to be careful. A second voice, older, gravelly. The Benedetti family doesn't send warning shots. If they placed someone close to her, then we'll handle it. Quietly. I froze, my hand on the cabinet lock. Her boyfriend, the older voice continued. Marcus Chen. We ran his background. His real name is Marco Benedetti. He's Victor's nephew. The world tilted sideways. How long has he been watching her? Orlando's voice was ice. 8 months, since before she applied here. They knew about her connection to Carlo Ricci. They've been positioning her as an asset. My father. They were talking about my father. The father who died 15 years ago in a mugging gone wrong. I must have made a sound because Orlando appeared in his doorway instantly, his eyes finding me in the dimness. For a long moment, we stared at each other. Miss Ricci, he said quietly. I think we need to have a conversation. I should have run. Should have grabbed my purse and fled and never looked back. But my legs wouldn't move. All I could think was, Marcus is a Benedetti. Marcus has been lying to me for 8 months. Marcus was never real. Sit down, Orlando said, not unkindly. Before you fall down. I sat. The older man, silver-haired, with eyes like chips of flint, studied me with professional interest. This is Sal, Orlando explained. He handles security for the family. Sal, give us the room. Sal nodded and left, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. Your father, Orlando began, settling into the chair across from me, was not killed in a random mugging. I'd suspected as much for years. You don't grow up in my neighborhood without learning that some deaths are too convenient to be coincidental. But hearing it confirmed felt like a punch to the chest. Who killed him? Victor Benedetti. 15 years ago, your father witnessed something he shouldn't have. A meeting between Victor and a federal prosecutor who was on his payroll. Your father was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Victor had him eliminated to protect his operation. The clinical way he delivered the information should have angered me. Instead, I felt oddly numb. And Marcus is Victor's nephew, placed in your life 8 months ago when they learned you'd applied to work here. They wanted someone close to you, someone who could use you as leverage against me if necessary. Or, his jaw tightened, someone who could eliminate you if you became a liability. Why would I be a liability? I didn't even know about my father. Because you work for me now. Because I made you untouchable by paying for your mother's surgery. Because in their world, anyone close to me is a potential target. His eyes held mine. I'm sorry, Miss Ricci. This is my fault. I should have anticipated they'd move against you. You knew. The realization crashed over me. When you hired me, when you paid for Mom's surgery, you knew about my father, about the Benedettis. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? 6 weeks ago, would you have accepted that the man you'd been dating for months was a spy sent to manipulate you? His voice was gentle. And would it have changed anything? You still needed the job. Your mother still needed the surgery. He was right, and I hated that he was right. What happens now? I asked. Now, Orlando stood, moving to the window. You stay away from Marcus Chen or Marco Benedetti or whatever he's calling himself. You don't answer his calls. You don't go home alone. I'll have Sal assign someone to shadow you. And you trust me to handle the Benedetti situation. Handle it how? He looked back at me over his shoulder, and in his eyes I saw the truth of what he was. Not just a businessman or even a mob boss, but something colder, something that made men disappear. The less you know, the better. But I promise you this, Miss Ricci, no one touches what's mine. And whether you meant to or not, when you accepted my offer, you became mine to protect. That should have terrified me. The possessiveness in his voice, the casual way he claimed ownership. But all I felt was a strange sense of relief. Because for the first time since my father died, someone was promising to stand between me and the monsters, even if that someone was a monster himself. I didn't go home that night, Orlando insisted, and for once I didn't argue. Sal drove me to a hotel in Chelsea, not the Ritz or some ostentatious display of wealth, but a quiet boutique place where the staff asked no questions, and the doorman nodded at Sal like they were old friends. "Someone will be outside your door," Sal told me as he handed over a key card. "Don't open it for anyone except me or the boss. Understood?" Understood. And my phone had been buzzing nonstop since I'd left the office. Marco, whoever he was, calling and texting with increasing desperation. "Where are you? I'm worried. Please call me back. Liv, what's going on?" Each message felt like a betrayal layered on top of betrayal. 8 months. I'd been sleeping next to a man who'd been sent to spy on me, to use me, possibly to kill me if his family deemed it necessary. 8 months of manufactured affection, calculated intimacy, lies wrapped in the language of love. I blocked his number at 2 a.m., sitting on the hotel bed in clothes I'd worn for 16 hours, too exhausted to shower, too wired to sleep. Then I made the mistake of Googling Carlo Ricci murder 2010. The articles were sparse. A small paragraph in the Times about a body found in an alley in Queens. Carlo Ricci, 38, victim of apparent robbery. Survived by wife Angela and daughter Olivia, 10. No arrests made. Case went cold within weeks. I'd been 10. I remembered that night with the clarity of trauma. Mom's scream when the police came to the door. The way the officers had removed their hats before speaking. The terrible gentleness in their voices. I remembered my father's funeral, the closed casket because the mugging had been brutal. I remembered Mom's face, carved from grief and rage, and a helplessness that never quite left her, even after 15 years. And all of it, had been a lie. Not random violence, but calculated murder. My father killed for being in the wrong place, for seeing something he shouldn't have seen. By Victor Benedetti, the man whose nephew had been sleeping in my bed. I must have dozed eventually because I woke to sunlight and someone knocking. Sal's voice. "Miss Ricci, I have breakfast and clothes. Boss's orders." The clothes fit perfectly. Jeans, a soft sweater, everything in my size. I didn't want to think about how Orlando knew my measurements. The breakfast was from the Italian place on 52nd Street. Coffee, black, 2 sugars, cornetti and fresh fruit. "He wants to see you," Sal said. "Not the office, somewhere else." Somewhere else turned out to be a townhouse in the West Village, tucked away on a tree-lined street that looked like something from a European postcard. Sal led me through a garden gate and into a first floor that was all exposed brick and modern furniture and surprising warmth. Orlando was in the kitchen, of all places, making espresso in a machine that looked like it required an engineering degree to operate. He wore jeans and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, the most casual I'd ever seen him. Without the armor of his suits, he looked younger, almost approachable. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a stool at the marble island. "Have you eaten?" Sal brought food. "Good." He pulled 2 small cups from the machine, slid one across to me. "This is my home. The real one, not the penthouse I use for show. No one knows about this place except Sal and a few trusted people. You're safe here." I wrapped my hands around the tiny cup, inhaling the rich scent. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve the truth. All of it." He leaned against the counter, studying me with those dark eyes. "And because I need you to understand what you've walked into. I work for a mob boss. I think I understand." "No," he interrupted gently. "You understand the surface, the business, the power, the danger. But you don't understand the why. Why your father died. Why the Benedettis want you. Why I'm willing to risk war to protect you." He took a sip of his espresso, gathering his thoughts. 15 years ago, my father and Victor Benedetti were partners. They controlled the ports together, split the territory, maintained peace between our families. It was profitable for everyone. I waited, sensing this was a story he didn't tell often. Then my father discovered that Victor was working with federal prosecutors, not as an informant, but as a puppet master. He'd compromised half the Justice Department, was feeding them cases against smaller families to eliminate competition while protecting his own operations. It was brilliant, really. Use the law as a weapon while appearing untouchable. My father saw them together, I said slowly. Victor and one of these prosecutors. Assistant U.S. Attorney named James Morrison. Your father was doing electrical work at a restaurant Victor owned. He was in the ceiling fixing wiring when Victor and Morrison came in for a private meeting. He heard everything. Names, dates, payoffs, targets. Enough to bring down not just Victor, but the entire corrupted system he'd built. Orlando set down his cup with precise care. Your father went to my father with the information. They were going to expose Victor together, bring evidence to the FBI's Internal Affairs Division. But Victor found out. He had your father killed before they could act. Made it look like a robbery. And then, his jaw tightened. Then he killed my father too. Made it look like a heart attack. He was only 53, perfectly healthy, but the medical examiner was on Victor's payroll. Death certificate said natural causes. I was 21, fresh out of Yale, suddenly in charge of an empire I barely understood. The pain in his voice was raw, real. This wasn't the cold mob boss or the calculating businessman. This was a man who'd lost his father to treachery. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. I survived. I learned. I became what I needed to be to hold my family together. He moved around the island, closer to me. But I never forgot. I never stopped looking for proof of what Victor did. And I never stopped protecting the one piece of evidence that could destroy him. What evidence? You. The word hung between us. I don't understand. I don't know anything. I was 10. Your father was smart, Miss Ricci. Before he went to my father, he made insurance. He recorded his own testimony, detailed everything he'd seen and heard, and hid it somewhere safe. He told my father where it was hidden, but my father died before he could tell me. My breath caught. And you think I know where it is? I think your father would have left you a way to find it. A clue, a message, something that would mean nothing to anyone else but everything to his daughter. Orlando's expression was intense. The Benedettis think the same thing. That's why they placed Marco in your life. They've been watching you for 15 years, waiting for you to lead them to that evidence. The enormity of it crashed over me. 15 years of surveillance. 15 years of being a pawn in a game I hadn't known I was playing. I don't know where anything is, I said. My father never... He didn't leave me any messages or clues. When he died, we lost everything. Mom and I moved to a smaller apartment. We sold most of his things. If there was something hidden, it's long gone. Maybe. Orlando pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, then turned it toward me. Or maybe you've been looking at it your whole life without seeing it. The image showed a photograph I recognized instantly. My father, young and smiling, standing in front of a newsstand. It was the only picture I had of him, kept in a frame on my nightstand since I was 10. I don't understand. Look at the background. The newsstand. What do you see? I peered closer. Behind my father, barely visible in the blur, was a sign. Angelo's News and Tobacco. That's in Queens. That place closed years ago. It closed 13 years ago, 2 years after your father died. But before it closed, your father rented a storage unit in the basement, paid for 50 years in advance, under a false name. Orlando's eyes held mine. I found the paper trail last month. The unit's still there, sealed, untouched. Whatever your father hid, it's in that storage unit. Hope and terror warred in my chest. Then get it. Get the evidence and destroy Victor. It's not that simple. The unit requires 2 keys to open, a safeguard your father implemented. I have 1 key. The other was sent to someone your father trusted, someone who was supposed to give it to you when you turned 25. I turned 25 3 months ago. I know. His voice softened. Which means someone has been keeping that key from you. Someone close enough to know your birthday. Someone who gained your trust. Marcus. Of course. He has the other key. Had. He gave it to Victor 2 weeks ago, according to our sources. Victor's been planning to raid that storage unit, retrieve the evidence, and eliminate you before you could become a problem. So it's over. They have both keys. They'll get the evidence, and they have a copy of my key, not the original. Orlando's smile was cold. I've been anticipating this move for months. The key Victor has won't work, and the one I have won't work without the real second key, which... He pulled a small brass key from his pocket. Is right here. I stared at the key, then at him. How? I convinced Marco's handler to switch his loyalties. Money talks, Miss Ricci. Even in families built on blood. He held out the key. This belongs to you. It's your father's legacy, your proof, your weapon. The question is what you want to do with it. My hand trembled as I reached for it. The metal was warm from his pocket, solid and real. What are my options? We retrieve the evidence together. We use it to destroy Victor Benedetti, not with violence, but with the law. We give the FBI everything they need to dismantle his empire. He'll die in prison, discredited and powerless. Orlando paused. Or you walk away. I'll handle Victor my way, which will be bloodier but effective. You go back to your life, your mother, your job. Stay out of the war. And if I choose that, to walk away, something flickered in his eyes, then I'll protect you anyway. You'll have guards, security, everything you need to stay safe. But you'll always be looking over your shoulder, Miss Ricci. Always wondering if today's the day someone from Victor's family decides to finish what he started. He was right. I could feel it in my bones. There was no walking away from this. Not anymore. If we do this, if we get the evidence and go to the FBI, what happens to you? Your family's not exactly clean either. No, he agreed. We're not. But I've spent 14 years preparing for this moment. Legitimizing our operations, distancing myself from anything that could be prosecuted. The Zanolotti family won't fall when the Benedettis do. We'll survive. We always do. I looked down at the key in my palm. My father's final gift. A chance for justice 15 years delayed. I want to do it, I said. I want to destroy the man who killed my father. Orlando's expression was unreadable. It will be dangerous. Victor will realize what we're doing. He'll come after you with everything he has. Then you'll protect me. That's what you said, right? That I'm yours to protect? Yes. The word was a promise and a threat, and something more complicated I didn't have a name for yet. Then protect me, and let me finish what my father started. He studied me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his dark eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. That I wasn't just a secretary anymore. Wasn't just a piece on his chessboard. I was a partner in this. An ally. All right, Miss Ricci. He extended his hand. We have an agreement. I shook it, feeling the warmth of his grip, the strength in his fingers, and I understood, finally, what I'd gotten myself into. Not just a job. Not just protection. But war. And Orlando Zanilotti was teaching me how to fight. The plan was simple, which should have been my first warning that everything would go wrong. We'd go to the storage facility at night, use both keys to access the unit, retrieve whatever evidence my father had hidden 15 years ago, and disappear before Victor realized his copy key was useless. Simple, clean, safe. Orlando insisted I stay at his townhouse while we prepared. "Your apartment is compromised," he explained on day 2, when I suggested going home for clean clothes. "Marco knows where you live. He has keys. Until this is over, you stay somewhere he can't find you." So I lived in the West Village townhouse, in a guest room that was nicer than any place I'd ever called home. Sal brought my things: clothes, toiletries, the framed photo of my father that I kept by my bed. He also brought my mother, much to my shock. "You can't tell her the truth," Orlando had said. "Not yet. Not until this is finished. But she shouldn't be alone if the Benedettis decide to use her as leverage. Mom loved the townhouse, loved the garden, the spacious kitchen, the way Orlando spoke to her with unfailing courtesy, and called her Mrs. Ricci, even when she insisted he use her first name. She thought I was dating him, jumped to that conclusion the second day and refused to be corrected. "He's a good man, Olivia," she told me. Her color better than I'd seen it in months, the surgery already working small miracles. "Successful, respectful, and the way he looks at you. We work together, Mom. That's all." Her eyes sparkled with a mischief I hadn't seen since before Dad died. "And he just lets all his employees live in his private home? Very professional." I didn't tell her that Orlando barely came to the townhouse while we were there, that he worked from the office during the day and only appeared late at night to discuss plans in his study. The door firmly closed, Sal standing guard to ensure we weren't interrupted or overheard. What I also didn't tell her was that those late-night planning sessions had started to feel less like strategy meetings and more like something else entirely. "The facility is in Long Island City," Orlando explained on night 3, spreading maps across his desk. We were alone. Sal had taken Mom to a doctor's appointment, leaving us in the quiet townhouse. Former industrial area, mostly warehouses now. The storage unit is in the sub-basement of a building Angelo Ricci owned. He went bankrupt in 2012, but the storage rentals were grandfathered in. He pointed to a spot on the map. "There's only one entrance, no cameras. Angelo didn't believe in them. But the Benedettis will be watching. They know about the storage unit. Even if they don't know, the key they have is useless. So we walk into a trap. So we prepare for one." His dark eyes met mine. "I'll have men positioned around the perimeter. The moment we're inside, they'll create a distraction, something that draws Victor's people away from the building. We retrieve the evidence. We leave. Clean and quick. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Are you having second thoughts, Miss Ricci?" I should have been. This was insane. Retrieving evidence from a storage unit that had been hidden for 15 years, with the man who'd killed my father almost certainly planning an ambush. But all I felt was a strange calm. "No," I said. "No second thoughts." "Good." Something flickered in his expression. "Because I need you to understand something. Once we do this, once we retrieve that evidence and move against Victor, there's no going back. You'll be a target for the rest of your life. Even after he's arrested, his family will want revenge. You'll need protection. Permanently." "I know." "Do you?" He stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, closer to me. "Do you understand what that means? Guards following you everywhere. Restrictions on where you can go, who you can see. Your life will never be completely yours again. It hasn't been mine since my father died." The words came out bitter. "At least this way I'm choosing my cage." His jaw tightened. "I'm not trying to cage you. aren't you?" I met his eyes. "You're telling me I'll need permanent protection, that my life will be restricted. That sounds an awful lot like a cage, Mr. Zanolotti. A gilded one, maybe, but still a cage." For a long moment he was silent. Then, "What if I told you it didn't have to be that way?" "What do you mean?" "Victor wants you dead because you're a threat. Because of what you know, what you might find. But if you weren't just an employee, if you were family, that changes the calculation." He paused, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. "The Benedettis won't touch a Zanolotti. It would mean war on a scale neither family could afford." My heart was suddenly hammering. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there's a way to protect you that doesn't require guards and restrictions, a way to make you untouchable." His eyes held mine. "Marry me." The world tilted. "That's insane." "That's practical." He pushed off the desk, pacing to the window. "Think about it, Miss Ricci. As my wife, you'd be protected by every alliance I've built, every obligation that binds our world together. Victor couldn't touch you without declaring war on the Zanolotti family. You'd be safe. Truly safe. You don't marry someone for protection. People in my world marry for all sorts of reasons. Protection, alliances, power. Love is a luxury we rarely afford." He turned to face me. "I'm offering you safety, security, a life where you never have to look over your shoulder again. That's more than most marriages offer. And what would you get out of this arrangement?" His smile was slight, unreadable. "A wife who's intelligent, loyal, and has proven she can keep secrets. Someone who understands my world because she's been forced into it. Someone I can trust." He paused. "And someone who doesn't look at me with fear. That's rarer than you might think." I stood, needing distance to think. This was crazy. Marrying a man I'd known for barely 2 months. A man who'd admitted he was a criminal, whose world was built on violence and corruption. But he'd also saved my mother's life. He'd protected me when he could have left me to the Benedettis. He'd given me the truth when he could have kept me in the dark. "I need time to think," I said finally. "We don't have time. Victor is planning his move. We retrieve the evidence tomorrow night. By this time next week, he'll either be under arrest or he'll be coming for you with everything he has." Orlando's voice was firm. "I need an answer tonight, Miss Ricci. Yes or no. Will you marry me?" The door burst open before I could respond. Sal stood there, his face grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Orlando's expression went cold. "What kind of problem?" "Victor just grabbed Marcus, publicly, outside his apartment. He's got him somewhere, and word is he's making him talk." "Marcus doesn't know anything," I started. "Marcus knows enough," Orlando cut me off. "He knows where you're staying. He knows we have the real key. He knows we're planning to move against Victor." He turned to Sal. "How long ago?" 20 minutes. I've got teams trying to locate them, but Victor's gone dark. No phones, no usual locations." Orlando's hands clenched into fists, the only sign of tension in his otherwise controlled demeanor. "He's going to the storage facility. Tonight. He'll torture Marcus until he tells him everything. Then he'll get there before we can." "So we move now," I said. "We go now, before he can get there." "It's a trap," Sal warned. "He'll have men waiting. He wants you to rush in unprepared." Then we rush in prepared. Orlando's eyes met mine, and I saw the question there. The same question he'd asked moments before, now with added urgency. I made my decision. "Yes," I said. "I'll marry you. But first we finish this. We get that evidence and we destroy the man who killed my father." Orlando's smile was sharp and dangerous. "Get your coat, Miss Ricci. We have a war to start." 30 minutes later, I was in the back of an SUV with tinted windows, wearing a bulletproof vest under my jacket, driving toward Long Island City and whatever waited for us there. Orlando sat beside me, his presence radiating that controlled intensity I'd come to recognize as his battle mode. "When we get there," he said, his voice low, "you stay behind me, always. You do exactly what I say when I say it. Understood?" "Understood. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you." His hand found mine in the darkness of the car, his fingers warm and strong. "If something happens to me, Sal gets you out. You take the evidence straight to the FBI contact I've prepared. You don't look back. You don't wait for me. You survive. Promise me." I looked at our joined hands, at this man who'd inserted himself into my life 2 months ago and changed everything. "I promise." "Good." He didn't let go of my hand. "And, Miss Ricci, when this is over, when Victor's in custody and you're safe, I'm going to hold you to that, yes. I'm going to hold you to keeping me alive long enough to regret it." His laugh was quiet, genuine. "That's my girl." The storage facility loomed ahead, dark and industrial against the night sky. Somewhere inside was the evidence that could destroy Victor Benedetti. Somewhere inside, quite possibly, was an ambush designed to kill us both. I squeezed Orlando's hand once, then let go. Time to finish what my father started. The storage facility smelled of mold and abandonment. Our footsteps echoed on concrete as Sal led us through the main level. Rows of padlocked units, most untouched for years, dust thick enough to track our passage. Orlando's hand stayed at the small of my back, a constant presence that was somehow both protective and possessive. "Sub-basement access is through here," Sal whispered, stopping at a metal door marked "Employees Only." He pulled out a set of lockpicks, worked the mechanism with practiced efficiency. The door swung open to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. Orlando pulled a flashlight from his jacket. "Stay close." The beam cut through blackness as we descended, the temperature dropping with each step. My breath misted in the cold air. Somewhere above us, I could hear Sal positioning himself at the door, our lookout, our first line of defense if Victor's men showed up. The sub-basement was smaller than the main level, with only a dozen units. Orlando's light found the one we were looking for. Unit 7B. My father's hiding place for 15 years. 2 locks, Orlando murmured, pulling out his key. "Mine goes in the left, yours in the right. We turn them simultaneously on my count." I fumbled my key from my pocket, my hands trembling despite my best efforts. The brass was cold against my palm as I slid it into the lock. "Ready?" Orlando's voice was steady, calm, as though we weren't potentially walking into a trap. "Ready. 3, 2, 1. Turn." The locks clicked in unison. The door swung open. Inside was a single filing box, the kind lawyers use for documents. Nothing else. Just that box, sitting in the center of an empty concrete space. Orlando reached for it, then hesitated. "Wait. What's wrong?" "It's too easy." His flashlight scanned the small space, looking for something. Tripwires? Cameras? I didn't know what dangers his world had taught him to anticipate. "Your father was smart. He wouldn't just leave evidence sitting in a box." He was right. I stepped into the unit, examining the walls, the floor, and there, carved into the concrete in the back corner, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it, were initials. O.R. Olivia Ricci. "There's something here," I said, running my fingers over the carved letters. The concrete felt different, newer. I pressed, and a section gave way, revealing a hollow space behind it. Inside was a smartphone. Old model, probably 15 years out of date. And a letter, addressed to me in my father's handwriting. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry for leaving you and your mother. I'm sorry for the danger I've put you in just by witnessing what I saw. The phone contains video and audio recordings of Victor Benedetti discussing his arrangement with Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison. It's everything. Names, dates, payments, targets. Enough to destroy him and everyone in his pocket. I'm leaving this to you because I trust that when you're old enough, strong enough, you'll know what to do with it. You'll know whether to use it for justice or for revenge. I hope you choose justice, sweetheart. I hope you choose to be better than the men who made this evidence necessary. I love you. Always. Dad. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the letter. Orlando's hand settled gently on my shoulder. We have it, he said quietly. Let's get out of here. That's when the lights came on. Fluorescent bulbs flickered to life overhead, harsh and blinding after the darkness. And standing at the entrance to the sub-basement, flanked by 6 armed men, was Victor Benedetti. He was older than I'd imagined. Maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that looked grandfatherly until you saw his eyes. Those eyes were empty, cold, like looking into the void. Miss Ricci, he said, his voice cultured, almost pleasant. Thank you for leading us to the evidence. I've been looking for that phone for 15 years. Orlando moved in front of me instantly, his body a shield. Victor. Orlando. Victor's smile was thin. I'd say I'm surprised to see you here, but we both know that would be a lie. You've been sniffing around this for years. I just didn't expect you to use Carlo's daughter as bait. I'm not bait, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm the one who's going to destroy you. Victor laughed. Brave words. Your father said something similar right before I put a bullet in his head. The casual admission, said with such indifference, made rage bloom hot and bright in my chest. He was innocent. He was just in the wrong place. He was a witness, a liability. I eliminate liabilities, Miss Ricci. It's how I've stayed in power for 40 years. Victor gestured to his men. Now, give me the phone, and I'll make this quick. You won't suffer the way your father did. Like hell, Orlando growled. Orlando. Orlando. Victor shook his head. You're outnumbered. Your man upstairs is already dead. Sal put up quite a fight, I'm told. And your team outside? They're dealing with a little fire I arranged. No one's coming to save you. Sal was dead. The words hit like a physical blow. Sal, who'd brought me breakfast and made terrible jokes and protected me like I was family. Orlando's jaw tightened. The only sign of grief he'd allow himself. You'll pay for that. Will I? Victor pulled a gun from his jacket. Or will you both just disappear? Another tragic murder-suicide. Mob boss and his secretary, caught in a forbidden romance that ended badly. He aimed the gun at Orlando. I'll even make sure your mother's taken care of, Miss Ricci. She'll die peacefully in her sleep. A kindness, really, considering the alternative. The threat to my mother cut through my fear, leaving only crystalline clarity. I pulled the phone from behind my back and held it up. You want this? Come and get it. Then I ran. Not toward the exit. That was blocked. But deeper into the sub-basement, into the maze of storage units. Darkness swallowing me as I left the lit area. Behind me, I heard Victor curse. Heard Orlando shout my name. Heard footsteps pounding after me. I dodged between units. The phone clutched against my chest. My father's evidence. My father's justice. I wouldn't let Victor have it. A hand grabbed my arm, yanking me backward. I screamed, struggled, but whoever held me was too strong. They dragged me back toward the light, toward Victor. Stupid girl, he hissed, wrenching the phone from my grip. Just like your father. Too stubborn to know when you're beaten. Orlando was on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from his temple. They'd hit him. Our eyes met across the space, and I saw fury and fear, and something that looked like apology. "I'm sorry," I mouthed. Victor examined the phone, then smiled. "Excellent. After 15 years, I finally have the only evidence that could destroy me." He looked at Orlando. "Any last words before I kill you both?" "Just one," Orlando said. "Now." The explosion came from above, massive, shaking the entire building. Victor's men stumbled, momentarily distracted. Orlando moved with shocking speed, snapping the zip ties like they were paper, grabbing the gun from the nearest man and putting 2 bullets in him before anyone could react. "Olivia, down!" he roared. I dropped as gunfire erupted. Orlando moved like violence given form, precise, controlled, lethal. 3 men down in seconds. Victor dove for cover, still clutching the phone. I scrambled toward the filing box, my father's letter still inside. If I couldn't save the phone, at least I could. Victor's hand fisted in my hair, yanking me backward. Pain exploded through my scalp as he pressed his gun to my temple. "Enough!" he shouted. The gunfire stopped. Orlando froze, his weapon aimed at Victor. "Drop it, Orlando, or I paint the walls with her brain." "Don't!" I gasped, but Orlando was already lowering his gun. "Smart boy." Victor's breath was hot against my ear. "Now kick it away." Orlando complied, his eyes never leaving mine. "Good." Victor dragged me backward toward the exit. "We're leaving, and if anyone follows, I kill her. Understood?" No one moved. Victor pulled me up the stairs, the gun never wavering from my head. My scalp burned where he gripped my hair. I could hear sirens in the distance. The explosion must have drawn attention. "Shut up," Victor snarled, even though I hadn't spoken. "Your father was a problem. You're a problem. Everyone close to you becomes a problem. But that ends tonight." He shoved me into the back of a car. Not his usual sedan, but something nondescript, stolen probably. Tied my hands with rope that bit into my wrists. The phone sat on the seat between us. My father's evidence, my father's death, all contained in outdated technology. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can take my time." His smile was terrible. "You wanted to know what happened to your father? I'll tell you everything, every detail, right before I do the same to you." The car pulled away from the facility. Through the rear window, I caught a glimpse of Orlando emerging from the building, blood on his face, murder in his eyes. Then we turned a corner, and he was gone. Victor drove for 20 minutes to a warehouse by the water. Isolated, dark, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. He dragged me inside, threw me into a chair, tied me to it with methodical efficiency. "Now then," he said, pulling out a knife. "Let's have a conversation about your father's last moments." And that's when I realized the phone in his pocket was recording. Had been recording since he'd taken it from me. He'd confessed to my father's murder. And he was about to confess to everything else, thinking the phone was just evidence he'd destroyed. I just had to survive long enough for someone to hear it. The knife was cold against my cheek. Victor traced it lightly, not cutting, just reminding me how easily he could. "Your father begged," he said conversationally. "Did you know that? At the end, when he knew I was going to kill him, he begged me to spare you and your mother. Offered me anything. Everything." I kept my breathing steady, focused on the phone in his pocket. It was recording. Every word, every confession. "What did he offer?" I asked, keeping him talking. "Money he didn't have. Silence he couldn't guarantee. The usual desperate bargaining of a man about to die." Victor circled me slowly. "But the thing about witnesses, Miss Ricci, is that they're only useful if they stay silent, and your father wasn't the silent type. He was a good man. He was a liability." The knife pressed harder, and I felt a thin line of warmth where it broke skin. Just like you. Just like anyone who threatens what's mine. Is that what you told yourself when you killed Orlando's father, too? His hand stilled. Who told you about that? Orlando did. He knows everything. The federal prosecutors, the corruption, all of it. I met his eyes. You think killing me stops this? He'll never stop hunting you. You've already lost, Victor. You just don't know it yet. His fist crashed into my face. Pain exploded through my jaw, stars bursting behind my eyes. I tasted blood. Stupid girl, he hissed. Orlando Zanalotti is nothing. His father was nothing. I've been playing this game since before either of you were born. He grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. You want to know what really happened? I'll tell you. And he did. For the next 20 minutes, Victor Benedetti confessed everything. How he'd compromised Assistant U.S. Attorney Morrison with blackmail and bribes. How he'd used Morrison to target rival families while protecting his own operations. How my father had overheard a meeting where they'd discussed eliminating a witness. A meeting that signed my father's death warrant. I shot him myself, Victor said, almost proudly. 3 times. Once in the chest, twice in the head. Made sure there was no chance of survival. Then I staged the mugging, paid off the medical examiner, and watched the case go cold. The phone was getting it all. Every word, every confession. And Salvatore Zanalotti? I asked, my voice thick with blood. Heart attack. Except it wasn't his heart. It was poison. Same medical examiner, same cover-up. 2 problems solved and no one suspected anything. He smiled. That's the beauty of controlling the system, Miss Ricci. I don't just break the law. I am the law. The warehouse door exploded inward. Orlando came through like an avenging angel, flanked by men I'd never seen before, not his usual crew. These were different. Federal agents, I realized, seeing the FBI jackets. Victor Benedetti. A woman's voice rang out, authoritative and clear. You're under arrest for murder, corruption of federal officials, and about 20 other charges we'll discuss downtown. Victor's face went white. He lunged for me, knife raised, but Orlando was faster. His fist connected with Victor's jaw with a crack that echoed through the warehouse. Victor went down hard, the phone skittering from his pocket across the concrete floor. Orlando caught it, held it up. Still recording, he said, his smile cold and terrible. Every confession, every detail, all admissible in court. You set me up, Victor gasped from the floor as agents swarmed him, cuffing his hands. I gave you rope, Orlando corrected, moving to me, his hands gentle as they untied the ropes binding me to the chair. You hung yourself with it. His fingers traced the cut on my cheek, his jaw tightening. Are you hurt? Did he? I'm okay. I wasn't really. My face throbbed, my wrists were raw, my whole body shook with delayed shock. But I was alive. Sal? Alive, wounded but alive. He took 3 bullets and kept fighting. Orlando's voice was rough with emotion. Stubborn bastard wouldn't die. Relief crashed through me so powerfully I nearly collapsed. Orlando caught me, held me against his chest, and I realized he was shaking too. I thought I'd lost you, he murmured into my hair. When he drove away with you, I thought, I'm here, I'm okay. The lead FBI agent, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, approached us. Mr. Zanalotti, Miss Ricci, we'll need statements from both of you. And that phone. Orlando handed it over. Everything you need is on there. Victor Benedetti confessing to 2 murders and 15 years of corruption. Assistant U.S. Attorney Morrison's name is mentioned extensively. I'd suggest you move fast before he learns about this arrest and runs. Already on it. She looked at me. You did good, Miss Ricci. Your father would be proud. Tears burned my eyes. My father. After 15 years, justice. Finally. The next 3 months were a blur of depositions, testimony, and media frenzy. Victor Benedetti's empire collapsed like a house of cards. Morrison was arrested trying to flee to Mexico. 14 other corrupt officials were indicted. The dominoes fell exactly as Orlando had predicted. And through it all, Orlando was there. Not hovering, not controlling, but present. A steady force when everything else was chaos. He'd moved Mom and me back to the townhouse, permanently this time. Sal recovered and resumed his post, now with a limp and 3 new scars he showed off proudly. Marco, disappeared. Last seen boarding a plane to Sicily with a briefcase full of Victor's money. Let him run. I had bigger concerns, like the fact that I'd agreed to marry Orlando Zanolotti, and we'd never actually discussed it again. Until one evening in late spring, when Orlando asked me to attend a charity gala with him. The Zanolotti Foundation's annual fundraiser, legitimate business, he'd assured me. Though I'd learned his version of legitimate still involved men who looked like they broke kneecaps for exercise. I wore a green dress that Mom insisted made me look like a princess. Orlando wore a tuxedo that made him look like sin and power wrapped in Italian wool. We danced, we smiled for cameras, we played the part of the perfect couple. And then, in the middle of his acceptance speech for some humanitarian award I was certain he didn't deserve, Orlando did something completely unexpected. He stopped mid-sentence, looked directly at me where I sat at our table, and said, "Actually, there's something more important I need to do." He stepped down from the podium, walked to me, and the entire ballroom went silent. "Olivia Ricci," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "3 months ago, I asked you to marry me. You said yes, but we never made it official, never told the world." Oh God, he was doing this. Here, now, in front of 500 people. I'm rectifying that now. He started to kneel, and his pants split. A loud, unmistakable ripping sound, right down the back seam. The ballroom erupted in shocked gasps and barely suppressed laughter. Orlando froze, half kneeling, his expression caught between horror and disbelief. "Did you just—" I couldn't help it. I started laughing. "My pants split," he said, sounding genuinely stunned. Orlando Zanolotti, who controlled half of New York with cold precision, undone by inferior tailoring. I noticed. This isn't how this was supposed to go. No? I was laughing so hard tears streamed down my face. How was it supposed to go? Romantic. Perfect. Not with my ass hanging out in front of the entire city elite. But he was smiling now, too. That rare, genuine smile I'd learned to treasure. Screw it. He finished kneeling, split pants and all, and pulled a ring box from his jacket pocket. "Olivia Ricci, will you marry me? Officially this time. In front of all these witnesses who will never let me forget the pants incident?" The ring was beautiful. Emerald-cut diamond, platinum band, exactly my style. "Yes," I said, not caring about the cameras or the crowd or anything except the man kneeling before me with ruined pants and hope in his dark eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on my finger, stood carefully. Someone handed him a jacket to tie around his waist, and kissed me while the ballroom applauded and flash photography lit up the room like lightning. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "Even if I just humiliated myself in front of everyone who matters. I love you too, especially because you humiliated yourself." We married 2 months later, in a ceremony that was supposed to be elegant and controlled and perfectly orchestrated. It was chaos. Mom cried through the entire ceremony. Sal gave me away and cried too. "Allergies," he insisted, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. Orlando's cousin showed up drunk and made an inappropriate toast. The cake collapsed. The band played the wrong first dance song. And halfway through the reception, a fight broke out between 2 rival families that Orlando had unwisely seated at adjacent tables. It was perfect. "This is a disaster," Orlando muttered, as we watched two men in tuxedos wrestle on the dance floor while Sal tried to separate them. "This is family," I corrected, lacing my fingers through his. "Messy, chaotic, imperfect family." He looked at me, and I saw the walls he'd built around himself finally, fully crumbling. I never had this. Never had messy. Everything was always controlled, calculated, perfect. "Perfect is boring," I said. "Perfect is lonely. This?" I gestured at the chaos around us. "This is real." He pulled me close, kissed me while our guests cheered, and someone's uncle yelled advice I pretended not to hear. And in that moment, surrounded by chaos and family and love, I understood what we'd built. Not a cage, not a trap, but something honest and true and entirely ours. 6 months later, we stood in the newly renovated Zanalati Holdings boardroom, now headquarters for legitimate operations only. Orlando had spent the past year divesting from anything questionable, turning the family business into something his mother would have been proud of. "It's done," he said, signing the final document that severed ties with the last of the criminal enterprises. "Completely legitimate. Boring, even." "Never boring," I corrected, my hand resting on my still flat stomach where our daughter was already making her presence known with morning sickness that lasted all day. He noticed the gesture, his eyes widening. "Are you pregnant?" 3 months. I wanted to wait until everything was settled to tell you. His smile could have lit the city. "We're having a baby." "We're having a daughter," I checked. He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulled me into his arms. "A daughter. God help me." "God help her," I laughed. "She's going to have you wrapped around her tiny finger." "Absolutely." He pressed his hand over mine on my stomach. "And I'm going to spoil her rotten and hire security for her first date, and probably embarrass her at every opportunity. You're going to be a disaster of a father. The best kind of disaster." I leaned into him, breathing in his scent, coffee and expensive cologne and home. Who would have thought? The broke girl running from her ex and the mob boss who saved her. Not exactly a fairy tale beginning. "No," Orlando agreed, his lips finding mine. "Better than a fairy tale. Because fairy tales are predictable. This? Us? We wrote our own ending." "And it's messy," I murmured. "And chaotic," he added. "And perfect," we said together. Outside the window, New York sprawled beneath us. The city where my father had died, where I'd nearly died, where I'd found love in the most impossible place, where the worst beginning had led to the most beautiful ending. Orlando Zanalati had claimed me as his that first day in his office. But I'd claimed him right back. All his darkness, all his complications, all his fierce protective love. We were imperfect and impossible and entirely, beautifully real. And that was more than enough.